was initially difficult to find a producer that was willing to helm a debut album of a newly signed band, but Don Gilmore would ultimately be the one to move forward with producing Hybrid Theory, as he was very impressed with Chester's singing ability when he heard him sing at a rehearsal and realized that there might be something special in this young band.
Chester has this incredible weird thing when he sings really aggressive. He has like 2 or 3 different voices inside his voice. You can hear 2 or 3 different notes, and it's the strangest thing in the world.
So the writing and recording sessions began. They took place at NRG Recordings in North Hollywood, California in early 2000 and lasted for about a month. The recording of the album mostly involved re-recording the songs from the demo tape, with only a few new songs written in this time period. The instrumentals and choruses on the final album remained mostly the same as they were on the demo tape, but Mike's rapping parts were significantly altered. Out of the demo tracks that were written before the recording commenced, Don was happy with only 2 songs, Points of Authority and With You. So there was a lot of hard work ahead, and Don was pushing the band very hard, especially Chester and Mike. The song structures and lyrics had to be changed over and over again until he was sure that each track was at its best. When it came to writing, Linkin Park were also ahead of their time, as they functioned as more of a hip-hop studio project. In the early days, it was mostly Mike working with Brad on the music. When the music was complete, they gave the tracks to the rest of the band to get feedback and make changes if necessary. It was quite an unusual process for a rock band at the time. Usually, the writing process of a rock band involved the entire band jamming in a rehearsal space, and whatever came together, usually from hours of jamming, eventually became a song. Once the music was complete and to everyone's liking, Mike and Chester could begin their work on lyrics and vocals. Having 2 singers and lyric writers turned out to be both challenging and beneficial.
When I come up with a part and I bring it to Chester, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking for these lyrics, like, is that cool? He's got to be able to say, this is what I like and this is what I don't like, and I have to be able to just take that and say, okay, and he has to do the same thing. Everybody has to do that.
Is it difficult to do that? Because, I mean, you write a riff or you write a lyric and you feel, hey, this really is what I want to get out, but the rest of the guys don't feel that way.
It can be, I mean, initially, but what's really good about working with multiple people who have just as much talent as the other person, it's like, I can say that, and then Mike will be able to come back at me and say, well, we can say that, but we can find another way to say it that might come across better, or maybe won't be as definitive and maybe a little bit more vague, because that's what we try to do. We try to make an outline for somebody to actually fill in the blanks for themselves, and create the story for themselves.
We each have our own little like quirks that we kind of like will lean towards one style of writing, and that may not be the best way. Like he said he may write something that's really like straight ahead, whereas I might write something that's really like what our producer Don would say, poor me. Like I write a lot of stuff that's just like, oh God, I'm so bummed or whatever. But we find a way to put those things that are a little more, hopefully a little more intelligent than like just whatever comes out of your head, and work with them a little bit and come up with something we're really proud of.
Many of the song themes on the album revolve around being honest and vulnerable. And in a sense, to do that, both Chester and Mike had to put themselves on the line. In this regard, Don Gilmore had an effect on how they approached the lyric writing process. He said, "I want to be entertained. I don't want to hear about your problems." And this is something Chester found to be the hardest part of lyric writing process.
You want to be entertaining, you want people to be entertained when they listen to your music, and that's really, we tried when we were writing songs, some of them may have more poor me type of lyrics or whatever, but it's still entertaining to listen to, it's still fun, and you still get something out of it. And like, that's what we tried really hard when we were writing the lyrics, that was the most difficult hurdle to jump, was what's too much and what isn't enough, Like, where's that fine line, and I think we found it. At least we've come really close.
Important to note that Linkin Park was one of few bands in their subgenre that did not have profanity in their lyrics. This was not intentional really, but happened quite naturally. In part, Don Gilmore and the other members of Linkin Park were responsible for this outcome, as Chester and Mike were asked to express themselves to the best of their ability, which led them to use more descriptive vocabulary without resorting to simple swearing in their lyrics.
And we also unconsciously didn't use any vulgarity on our record. And I think that those are things that kind of really step out, especially lyrically, because kids can appreciate, they seem to appreciate our honesty in our lyrics rather than just kind of coming up with something to try to sound tough or sound like you know what you're talking about. So.
While the band was writing the material for Hybrid Theory, quite a few demo tapes were sent to the record label to show the progress of their work.
Oh, this is the last one?
Yeah, this is the most recent stuff they've got. I think this is the one with the live drums.
So I like the way it starts off. It's kind of mellow. You aren't quite sure where they're going with it.
Right.
It's a good intro for radio too. It could be a nice radio edit. It's soft. I like the way he's coming up with. And the drums busting, yeah. Some of the most serious challenges in the music business are the fact that you've got to listen to about 20 CDs a day and be able to discern they're all supposed to be good because they're all filtered through attorneys and managers and whatnot, or scouts, and you've got to sit there and listen to them all and be fresh each time you hear it because you don't want to miss something. They're never going to be perfect. You don't want to miss some element that's really going to jump out at you and go, God, there's some, little acorn there that could become the oak,
For the album, Linkin Park decided to stick with most of the songs they previously sent out to record labels, which was a risky move because the same songs were the reason the band was turned down. Several songs that made it on the record go as far back as 1997, when Mark Wakefield was still on vocals, among which were A Place for My Head, Forgotten, By Myself, and Runaway. All of the songs had different interpretations throughout the years and have gradually evolved into the versions we now hear on the final album. A Place for My Head was the first song Chester recorded with the group. There have been several versions of the song made from 97 to 2000, though the majority of changes revolved around the lyrics. On By Myself, Chester did his first screams on a recording. Even though his usual singing style was quite aggressive, it wasn't a scream. In order to grasp the screaming technique, bandmates gave Chester CDs to listen for reference, and after listening to them, he was able to master the screaming technique relatively quickly. Two of the hardest songs to write on the record were Points of Authority and Runaway. Difficulty of writing Points of Authority was in writing an impactful chorus, as the song originally had its bridge as the chorus, and Don Gilmore was not quite happy with that. Runaway was even more of a struggle, as the song just did not want to come together, but out of that frustration, another song was born, One Step Closer. The lyrics of One Step Closer were addressed to Don Gilmore and at the record label, which was meddling with the writing process of the band. But mainly, the lyrics spoke pretty much directly to Don and how hard-headed he was, by refusing a lot of Mike and Chester's ideas, by practically asking them to redo certain song sections without even giving them a proper listen. The band was even having second thoughts before turning in the final version of One Step Closer. But luckily they did, as One Step Closer became their first and successful single. And Runaway was successfully finished, of course, and even became a minor rock radio hit. Though Chester stated that both songs were terrible, and initially he did not want them to make the record, and added that Runaway was the worst song they have written for the album. In the end was originally called Untitled, but the band decided to change it because D'Angelo released a single of the same name in early 2000. As the stories say, Mike locked himself in the rehearsal space overnight to work on a new song, and when Rob and Joe came back the next afternoon, Mike had written the demo for In the End. He switched from Cubase to Pro Tools at this point and was making beats with MPC 2000 on the floor. They didn't have a table and even chairs in the room, so he just sat on the floor and worked. Rob had this to say when he first heard the song. I remember thinking, we just made it. We now had a real shot to do this professionally professionally. I sat down so inspired and put a drum part over the sampled pattern and couldn't wait for everyone to hear what was created overnight. That raised the bar for everything else that came after it. Mike had cracked the code and put us in a different league on that night. And indeed, we know how big of a role this song played in Linkin Park's career. Even though Chester initially hated the song as well and did not want it on the album, over time he changed his opinion and stated that it's a good song that stood the test of time. Papercut was one of the songs that came about relatively quickly and never lost its working title. Mike, Chester and Brad all cited Papercut as their favorite track at different points in time. They felt it combined all their influences in this one song that was executed very well. With You was initially titled Dust Brothers, as it was written around the beat, synth and moog made by Dust Brothers, whom the band met while searching for someone to produce their record. On May 7th, 2000, the album was mostly finished and a CD with studio finals was made. The order and song names were still not final, however. This CD had the first known versions of Pushing Me Away, Cure for the Itch and Runaway. Pushing Me Away was written towards the end of the recording session. The idea behind the track was to have a song that was similar to Crawling, which had no rapping but was still energetic. Another thing that tied these two songs together was that both were inspired by Depeche Mode. Pushing Me Away was a song that came together relatively quickly and quite naturally. Cure for the Itch was one of the last songs to be finished and was an attempt by Mike and Joe to make a track without vocals that would sound like a movie soundtrack. High Voltage, which originally appeared on the EP, was remixed and re-recorded for the inclusion on Hybrid Theory, and was supposed to follow right after Cure for the Itch, as you can actually hear the ending of Cure for the Itch at the start of High Voltage. The song did not make the cut, however, most likely because it did not fit in thematically with the rest of the record. It is a shame, as the song features some of the best rapping Mike has ever done. However, High Voltage was included on the Japanese edition of the album in 2001 and was also featured on the One Step Closer single release. My December was written after the album was already finished. It was, however, written specifically for a Christmas album titled The Real Slim Santa. My December was also included into the Japanese edition and One Step Closer single release. The band's original bassist, Dave Farrell, had to fulfill his commitments with another band named The Snacks and went on tour with them before Linkin Park got signed. So the band had several bassists contribute to the record during the recording period. Most of the bass lines were recorded by Brad, Mike, and at one point even the producer, Don Gilmore, pitched in, but the band did not like the idea of producer playing bass on their record. The songs Papercut, A Place for My Head, and Forgotten required a little more technique and were recorded by Ian Hornback. Scott Cosio recorded the bass parts for One Step Closer, and out of all the session bass players, spent the most time with the band and was the touring bass player for the majority of 2000 before the return of original bassist Dave Farrell. On July 22nd, Linkin Park embarked on their first world tour in support of the upcoming release of Hybrid Theory. The tour lasted nearly 6 months and consisted of 57 shows. The record was also promoted during other tours, where Linkin Park were a supporting act. The first single from Hybrid Theory, One Step Closer, came out on September 28th and was accompanied by a music video. The concept of the video was conceived by Joe Hahn and director Gregory Dark, who was transitioning from adult film industry into music video field. The video was shot in Los Angeles, 63 feet underground, in an abandoned subway tunnel. The video famously features the band playing in this subway, with some ninja-like characters around, and of course, Chester hanging upside down from the ceiling and screaming. But the concept of the music video was originally a sci-fi idea. The end result was different from what I had imagined in my mind. It was a lesson on how the process works. Joe Hahn was a co-director on all of the music videos for Hybrid Theory, which gave the band more control over how they were presented. By July 18th, the album was mixed by Andy Wallace and mastered by Brian Gardner. Here's a recollection of Don Gilmore when the record was finished. The record company had kind of just signed this band that they thought was a normal rap rock group that would do okay, and when they first came in and listened to it, their jaws were on the floor. They couldn't believe it. They were bringing everybody from the record company over to listen to the album in the studio, and there was so much excitement. And then it became a huge priority instantly for the label. When the artwork for Hybrid Theory was being made, it was important for the band to help sculpt the look of it. Even though they didn't know what art direction was, they wanted to be involved in the design of the album packaging. The soldier on the cover was inspired by stencil graffiti style of Banksy, who was at the time an underground street artist. The soldier was drawn by Mike, and the wings were added by Frank Maddox, who designed the rest of the album art. Maddox was scouted by the band in their search for the album art designer. As people with artistic background and education, Mike and Joe clicked with Frank. They had similarities in their vision and mutual understanding as artists. Besides, Frank was the one who made the album art for the 2000 album White Pony by Deftones, which Linkin Park liked a lot. In fact, there are similarities in artwork design of White Pony and Hybrid Theory, especially the black and white pictures arranged in a collage style. The idea of a soldier with wings was very representative of Linkin Park's sound.
The thing about the cover that we wanted to do is that obviously a lot of people are familiar with a musical hybrid. We wanted something that was more us, that was more personal, and so we being that we mixed heavier sounds and more sensitive elements in our music, we wanted to do something with the soldier being the heavier thing and the dragonfly wings being more delicate.
And Mike drew this.
3 more singles and music videos were released in support of the album. The second single, Crawling, was the first video to feature Dave Farrell back on bass. The music video also featured a more prominent and meaningful storyline than One Step Closer did. Crawling was in a sense a natural progression for the band, as with this video they were able to show to wider audiences a softer, more sensitive side of the band. Crawling won the band's first Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance in 2002. Papercut was released as the third single and is accompanied by probably the creepiest and coolest looking music video the band has ever put out. Even though Mike said in a recent interview that the video aged poorly, I still kinda like it. The single, however, was not released in the US, but was released exclusively in the UK. Even though Papercut did not perform as well as the rest of the singles, it still broke top 20 in several countries across the globe and has been certified gold in 2017 for selling over 500,000 digital copies. The final and most impactful single from Hybrid Theory was, of course, In the End, the best charting single from Hybrid Theory, which peaked at number 2 on Billboard 100 and reached number 1 position on several other charts in the US and across the world. The success of In the End was a big reason for the overall success of the album. The music video won the Best Rock Video and was nominated for Video of the Year at the 2002 Video Music Awards. Joe Hahn had this to say about the production of music video for In the End. This video was a wonderful opportunity for me to begin my career as a film director. My goal with this was to create a fantasy-based parallel world that matched the emotion of the song. This video reflects my early influence in fantasy, animation, graphic novels, and special effects. There were plans to release a single for Points of Authority, but it was cancelled. Still, a music video was released which featured footage of the band's live shows. Points of Authority was also a minor radio hit, along with Runaway and My December. Due to the success of Hybrid Theory, Linkin Park received invitations to perform at several high-profile tours and festivals. The band also created a tour of their own, Project Revolution, which was of course headlined by Linkin Park and featured other bands such as Cypress Hill and Adema. In 2001, the band toured relentlessly and impressively played over 320 shows throughout 2001. The success of Hybrid Theory skyrocketed Linkin Park's career and made them one of the biggest rock bands of 21st century. But what makes Hybrid Theory a record of a generation? In short, it's the accessibility of that album, which allowed for so many teenagers of early 2000s to connect with Linkin Park's music. Hybrid Theory managed to accomplish a very difficult task of breaking the boundaries of genres and put all of Linkin Park's influences into a small convenient package, which was easy to digest, even for those who never even listened to rock music before. I know that because I was one of those teenagers, and I had classmates with whom I bonded over Linkin Park's music, and they did not have prior experience with rock music as well. Over the years, I have noticed that many people that really don't listen to heavy music still listened to Linkin Park, especially Hybrid Theory, and I came to realize how universal this album really is. As the years went by, I moved on to other, more advanced styles of heavy music, and for me, Linkin Park became a thing of the past. But I have never forgotten that for me, just as for many others, it all began with Hybrid Theory. Revisiting this album in such detail was an interesting trip down the memory lane. Going through the footage of Hybrid Theory made me remember what made it so good and how hard the band had to work to earn their success. Releasing this 20th anniversary of Hybrid Theory was the smartest decision Linkin Park could have made to commemorate this record. Just seeing how much music they have made by that time alone is staggering, and the fact that they are sharing all their demos is quite unusual. Usually artists don't want you to hear the process of how they got to where they are. Instead, they want to show only the best of their work. But Linkin Park had this philosophy of transparency very early on, and they maintained it throughout their career to this day, as they have been sharing all their material with their official fan club, Linkin Park Underground, since early 2000s. As a result, they have this unbreakable bond with their fanbase, which is why so many fans have stuck by Linkin Park for all these years, even though the band went through many changes in their sound. This was interesting and very challenging video to make, so if you enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you dropped a like, left a comment, and considered subscribing if this type of content is your cup of tea. Have a nice day, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Take care.